Flea Mortals is a monster book for 5th edition published by MCDM. I picked it up after finding the 5.5 monster manual kind of underwhelming and honestly sort of boring. I heard good things about Flea Mortals, and so I decided to pick it up. So let's unbox it. I might dig into my thoughts on the 5.5 monster manual some other time, but the short version is it's adequate. The stat blocks are easy to read. The monsters have been running fine at my table. They just kind of feel really generic. Like monster background and lore took a big hit as the character entries became blurbs, and they replaced many but not all of the humanoid species with generic equivalents. Goodbye orcs, goodbye goblins, goodbye drow. So the appeal of Flea Mortals is that it's a more comprehensive monster manual that leans more into the lore. I love monster books, so more monsters is always good. And, leaning into that lore is definitely something that I'm interested in. It's also mechanically crunchy, which is also something that I can occasionally be interested in. I don't know. We'll see. I have kind of paged through the PDF a little bit, so I have some idea of what I'm getting into before I open up the box. But let's take a look. So I ordered Flea Mortals directly from their website, and I got the PDF ahead of time. Came right after I purchased it. Book came a couple weeks later because that's how these things work. And it's been pretty cool to just gotta go through it. So there's a couple of things that kind of stand out in this book. So for one, it is crunchy, and they do get into some concepts that they definitely get into things that feel like an echo of D&D 4th edition, particularly things like minions, which are kind of monsters that are meant to be mowed down by PCs. That's okay, because I never had problems with minions in 4th edition. I think it was a cool concept. It just never quite worked, especially at higher level minions. It just kind of seemed to pop like balloons. So they've got those in here. They also bring back roles, which was another thing from 4th edition that they kind of downplayed in 5th. I think the idea is still there, but maybe not as explicit. And so we've got roles like Ambusher, Artillery, Brute, Companion, Controller, Leader, Minion, Retainer, Skirmisher, Soldier, Solo, Support. So I like this idea because it gives you some ideas about how the monsters can be used at the table, and as kind of shorthand for this is how you might use this particular monster, which, just reading through things, sure, you can pick up on that, but it's nice to kind of make it a little bit explicit. It also has psionic powers because they have their own psionic powers rule system, and that's interesting. I might have to go and pick up that book. I always liked the idea of psionics as its own thing, separate from magic. For the most part in this book, just from what I looked at previously, it's not super crazy. It will work well with regular arcane systems, even if you don't pick up their psionic system. They talk about villain actions. They talk about companion creatures, which this one actually kind of threw me for a loop. The idea is that these are creatures who work with the party, right? So in ye olden days, you might have subdued a dragon. Well, there could be a companion. Well, this book doesn't actually have a companion dragon, but that's the idea. You subdue the monster and now they work with you, or you convince them to work with you. There's a companion Trent. There's a couple of other different kinds of companions scattered throughout this. So that's an interesting idea. The downside to it is if you don't use companions, then there's an awful lot of companions in this book that you're not going to be taking advantage of. The other cool thing is retainers. So they have creatures who can adventure alongside the player characters whom they can augment them, so you can hire them and just kind of work for the party, which I think is a cool idea and another interesting use of monsters. But again, if you're not going to use retainers, then you've got more monsters you might not use. But then again, they're just stat blocks, right? So you could always just reuse them. Then they get into some strategies, how to use minions, that kind of thing. A lot of kind of just setting things up. They also do sort of how to build an encounter by challenge rating and break things down with the different monsters and the type of monsters you'd use and the type of creatures and what have you. So I haven't gotten into any of this stuff yet. It seems pretty cool. They've got converting ancestries. This book contains multitudes of creatures, but really, does any GM ever have enough stat blocks? The Orc Rampart is a great soldier, but perhaps a kobold version of that creature would better suit your campaign. Or perhaps you need to find an Angleatull who functions like lizard folk pterosaur. So, interesting. So I guess what they're doing here is they're offering you conversion options, which is cool, and which I think is actually missing from the regular monster manual, because they did introduce kind of generic characters, or generic monsters that you can use in place of a goblin or an orc. But then they didn't actually give you any characteristics to explain how you're supposed to do that, which I find for new DMs that might be kind of problematic. I don't know. But anyway, they come in here and they define it and they give you an idea as to, like, different sorts of ancestry abilities that they'd be able to use. Like bugbear defining characteristic has bugbear's inspiration. Allies within 15 feet of the bugbear who can see or hear them have advantage on wisdom and charisma saving throws. So that's cool. Then we get into the actual monsters. And so this is pretty cool. I've looked through this a little bit before. I love the art. I love the art does not take over the entirety of the book, which is something we see in the 5.5 Monster Manual. Like, I get how they went for the full page art spreads, but geez, guys, I really like my full-blown stat blocks. Let's see, they give you some background on the characters. They talk about, for these guys who are like frog people, they can use deadly toxins. They're an indicator sea species that shows how well the environment's doing. They're moisture dependent. So kind of cool. And they have a clawfish companion. So that's nifty. Let's see, you get into animals, bird of prey, camels. I always like having just random animal stat blocks around, not just because we have druids in the party, but just having them as something I can just pick up and use in the campaign is helpful. So basilisks. So they don't recreate one for one every monster out of the monster manual. They can't, just because of how I believe how the OGL worked, if I remember the commentary online. But they do a lot of, their own spins on creatures that have, they could have shown up in WotC's monster manual. And I like how much background we get. Oh, hey, look, there's some full page art. They still have full page art, guys, but it's tastefully done. So Devil Adjudicator, Devil Juris, Magistrate. If you go to hell and you need to deal with the law, that sounds cool. Now, they don't have, interestingly, I noticed this when I was flipping through the PDF, they did not break out a whole bunch of different kinds of dragons. What they did instead was make dragon bosses. So these are meant to be like the dragon enemy in your campaign. And I don't know, I kind of wanted more dragons. I guess I'm just a sucker for dragons. But then again, I have way too many dragon books, so I guess I understand why they did it. I don't have a lot of use for standalone big bad dragons in my campaign, aside from Morix, the black dragon who stole the blade Black Razor, which the guys have to go up against at some point. But as David and I like to say, you can always steal from the best. And maybe one of these monsters will turn out to be a Warix with the serial numbers filed off. We get into elementals, which could be very helpful for my Elemental Apocalypse campaign when we get back to it, because I love having some elemental threats, and I only have so many of them in the core rules. So it looks like they've got like Oracle of Storms, Force of Earth. Cool. Sunlight Nexus. Huh. Principle of Growth. I'm guessing this is a giant bug. Nice. Giants. So, I think so far what I've found going into this is finding enough variants to kind of keep me interested and keep me busy, and to, come up with threats that my PCs haven't seen before. My gaming group has been together for something like 30 years. The guys are very familiar with your standard monster manual. So I loved having like Kobold presses of various Tome of Beasts books, because they were just enough different from the normal that it could surprise the guys, and like they wouldn't quite see it coming. Otherwise, it's, oh look, it's just another hill giant. But in this case, let's see if we've got. So I saw hell giants here somewhere. Frost giant, stone giant. Did you bring Malders? I don't know. Maybe they weren't there. Fire giant. Yeah. In any case, so they got a variety of different giants here. We've got some fire giants. We've got frost giants. Oh, there it is. There's the hill giant clobberer. Great. So, my PCs are used to your kind of standard hill giant. This gives them something that they haven't seen before. So I like that idea. The other things that I enjoyed, so I went to, let's see if I can go find it here. Oh wait, if we stop here. So in my current campaign, Greyhawk 76, the guys went up against Manticore and they just defeated it. This is an example of a Manticore companion where it has these different kinds of abilities they can use to augment the PCs. So, oh, interesting idea, right? I don't know. We haven't had monsters companions in my campaign in a very long time, so it might be an idea worth exploring at some point. See, now we have orcs. So I was kind of frustrated when I was flipping through the new monster manual and I could not find just standard entries for orcs and all of the various humanoids. It's cool that we're establishing them as ancestries and that we're getting additional background and stuff, but having them available just as part of the core book just I just prefer that rather than having generic monsters. I like that Flea Mortals has those guys baked right into it. I don't know that my guys are going to get a Shambling Mound companion. It might be kind of hilarious, but I don't think they need a Shambling Mound companion. Oh, we got multiple different kinds of Sturges. Cool. Time Raiders, because we must not say what they actually are. So, alternative to WotC's copyrighted stuff. Titans. Really big krakens, additional trolls. There's a whole lot of stuff in this book. I'm not going to go through every last thing, but one of the things I wanted to open, if I can find it real quick, is, let's see, coming back over to the Trents. So I really liked this because I was incorporating a corrupted Trent into my Greyhawk 76 campaign, and I just liked these actions as being just kind of more interesting than what were in the core D&D rulebook. So they get thorn tendrils, and which allows them to attempt to grapple a target, which is cool, which is what you would expect from a Trent. Swinging tendrils, once they actually have them grappled, they can swing them in violent circles, which kind of sounds like the Whomping Willow for Harry Potter. But I like that. I mean, it's more thematic in terms of just being an interesting monster rather than just kind of, it's a tree that walks. And I also like how it has like actions that give it the opportunity to help the party, because even if it's not going to be a companion, it gets healing growth. Each creature within the Trent's choice within 30 feet of them gains 3d8 plus 4 hit points. They also have Reel and Wrap. The Trent wraps one creature they have wrapped. Reel and Wrap. The Trent wraps. Reel and Wrap. The Trent wraps one creature they have grappled in thick vines, pulling the target up to 10 feet forward. Reel and Wrap. The Trent wraps one creature they have grappled in thick vines, pulling the target up to 10 feet toward them. The creature can't speak until the grapple ends. Okay, well, that's not actually super helpful for the PCs, but you can see how like they could capture the PC to subdue them. It's setting up something other than just a straight up, Trent smash sort of combat encounter. And like the utility spells, speak with animals, speak with plants. So I think this is giving you something much more akin to like a fantasy ent from Lord of the Rings than maybe we saw in the core D&D rulebook. So we get into some undead, that kind of stuff. So here near the end, we've got something a little different from the rest of the monsters. We have, but effectively like I guess that's like a monster template. Yeah. Okay. So cool. So it's like a particular area that then provides traits for the monsters therein. So for example, an enchanted forest, you can have a creature that has enchanted forest traits like speak with beasts and plants, tree stride, and living forest. A writhing grove thrives in a 30-foot radius centered on the enchanted forest creature. Cool. Enchanted forest lair actions. So frothing flora, writhing roots. Pretty cool. And then they have a couple of different examples of monsters like the bone stalker, dancing lady, stag, rot beast. Cool. And then they do the same for graveyard and tomb, road, different threats along the road, weeping willow. Ooh, gonna have to come back to that one. Ruined keep. So what I like about these, in addition to the maps, is just the idea that there are these traits associated with the creatures. There's different specific actions that you can take that are associated with the location. It's just cool. It's just adding a little something extra to the game that you can then make a swamp mechanically different and more interesting than just a forest, which is something that I've really been trying to do with both my Elemental Apocalypse game and with my Greyhawk 76 campaign, where the guys have been adventuring through the Mist Marsh for the last couple of sessions. So I really liked that idea. Let's see, is there anything else in the book that I should get into here? I think, let's see. Okay. So then the last thing they do is add rival factions or rival adventuring groups for the PCs to go up against. So we have the Grave Order here. And let's see. Abominations. Complete with magic items. That's cool. The Black Iron Pact. And Wilderkith. Wilderkith? So I like this idea of being able to just have drop-in NPCs that you can threaten your player characters with, or perhaps they're just rival adventuring groups, what have you. We had, I think, in one of our campaigns, the Iron Tyrants, which were the Iron Knights? I don't remember. They were Knights of Hexter, and they drove the Black Razors crazy because they were very, very good at their job. They were very, very lawful evil, and we were very, very chaotic good, or just maybe, I don't know, occasionally chaotic stupid. And so having them as a menace and as a threat and as something that we were constantly going up against was super fun. So I like the idea that they just include these as drop-in things that you could use in the book. So there you go. That is Flea Mortals. It's a nice, hefty book. It's about the same size as the Monster Manual for D&D 5.5 or D&D 2024, however you want to call it. I'm looking forward to actually using it in my campaigns, both for Greyhawk 76 and for Elemental Apocalypse, which are the two campaigns I'm hoping to finish up in 2026. You guys have the book? If so, what do you think about it? What other Monster Manual books do you like? What books do you use to make sure that you have enough monsters? Let us know by leaving a comment on YouTube or emailing us at podcast@lairofsecrets.com.